Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Welcome to Matter 11, which is about retail provision. We don't have any external participants, so it is just the council and the inspectors in this session. We don't think this session will last particularly long, but we've got some questions and some things we need some clarification on. So I will lead the session, but Mrs. Wright will also have some questions and will join into the discussion. Can the council just introduce to us who will be taking part in the session this afternoon?
Yes, I will be taking part in relation to the drafting of policies, so far as it may be relevant. And we've got Ms. Hang, Jonathan Quilter, and Phil Drain.
Thank you. We'll take the policies generally in order that we've set them out in our questions, which relate to the order in the plan. And if we can start with policy PC 07, retail and commercial leisure growth. This, as far as we understand it, this policy, it is proposed that council proposed this policy be relocated to the strategic policies section. Can you just give us some reason for that thinking?
Hang on. Sorry, bear with me. Sorry, sir. I lost you on the screen. Simply because it's as you like, an umbrella policy which deals with retail and commercial growth at a strategic level.
Okay.
That's the long and the short of it, really.
Okay. The policy there is in the council's in F9A a suggestion that the figures for comparison and convenience change in the light of the updated Lichfields retail study. Can you just explain a little bit about that? And in particular, there is a significant drop in comparison retail floor space that is proposed. And can you help me to understand what is the reason for that?
Yeah, I'm wondering if Ms. Hang can help us with that. Thank you.
If you allow me just a few minutes just to get the document open up and refresh my memory on that one. But sorry, it's still loading. So basically, my understanding is that the 2014 retail and commercial leisure growth study was it has the projection up to the year 2030, and so when we commissioned Lichfield to update the addendum retail study, they need to reflect the change in the plan period, and it updates the period up to 2033, and the reason why there was a drop was because the latest forecast has it is to reflect the latest forecasts from Experian and other data sources that the report was based on, and it reflects the wider market trends at the moment, as you and ourselves that it has been known that retail in the past 10 years has gone under significant trends of decrease, and it has a lot of uncertainty at the moment. However, as far as the latest forecasts suggest, then based on the expenditure and projection is concerned, the forecast in terms of retail floor space has been dropped based on the data. If that makes sense, sorry, I'm rambling a little bit. But
It makes sense in the way you've explained it. I mean, it is a significant drop in that the plan. You know, the period of that study has been extended, because this is now the planned period, where I think before you said it was up to 2030, I think, in the 2014 study. So the period is extended, but the figure for comparison has dropped from 4,844 square meters down to 1,604. That's correct, isn't it?
Yes, but the previous study was done in 2014, which is 7 years old, and the latest the addendum study was updated just last year, and it was based on the latest forecast that was published in, I think, in 2020. I think around, if I am correct, it was done post Brexit. In February yes. 2020, yeah.
But I'm sorry, I'm stopping. Go on, carry on.
I'm just checking the planned period, the period that the 2014 study is forecast on. So if you bear with me, but if you have any questions, please carry on, and I will check in the meantime. Sorry, Inspector. So I've just checked the document C14, and the period that it forecast was from 2015 to 2030. So that's 15-year period. Whereas the latest retail floor space that was updated in F7B was for this plan period, so 2016 essentially up to 2033, and that's 17-year period. But because of, as I mentioned, because of the it takes into account of the latest trend that was reported in 2020, that's the reason why there was that drop there.
Thank you. So in terms of the updated figure, the updated base date is the same as the plan, so 2016. So it's not that there's been some more comparison retailing built early on in the period. This is actually, it's a drop for some other reason, which is, from what you're saying, to do with forecasts.
Yes.
I presume, because it's putting that forward, that the council is content with that significant drop, in that it is therefore assuming that it does not require so much comparison floor space within the borough. to the plan
Yes.
period?
Yes, Inspector. Yes, in terms of retail provision, we have had this discussion in the council as well as during the consultation period, whether we set out a retail floor space requirement on each site. But because of the nature of retail, the nature of the market that retail environment is going through, we think the best approach is not to set out a specific number of floor space for each site. And we set out the needs range that we would need, and we identified the sites that retail floor space can come forward, which is the 4 sites allocation in the plan and the primary shopping areas, in the designated centers. But we don't set out a specific number for these sites because that consideration would be considered at the planning application stage, and it should be decided by the end user so that it's adapt better to the market condition at the time and to the locality. And we consider that approach is still sound because the identified needs of retail has been used to consider recent conversations with developers, and I think as we set out in G11A, site R01 and site let me double check. Sorry. Yes, so R01 and R15. In terms of the latest information on this site of how much retail floor space will be accommodated on those 2 sites, it will cover the majority, it will deliver the majority of these retail needs, and we consider that the rest of these needs can be met by the other sites, which is site R02 and R14 and other windfall development over the plan period. So we are content in general that this need will be accommodated.
Okay. So for example, on if you look at the study on table 12 for comparison, and I know this is not policy because it's how it's been calculated, and the policy figure is for borough-wide figure, but the figure for Brentwood Town Centre on table 12 of the update. It's quite a fairly low figure for Brentwood Town Centre, and I presume that I'm asking the question that the council are content with that low figure, and that is satisfied. Can it be satisfied that that reduction in comparison floor space provision is not going to hinder the viability of the town centre, and that will actually enable the town centre to grow because there's growth aspirations for the town centre, but from what the council is saying, it is content that reduction in floor space provision for comparison goods is right.
Yeah, so that figure is essentially the need, and we can take it as an indicative or a minimum as a consideration. But when it comes to delivering the retail needs in the future, it would be delivered by site allocations or by windfall developments, and so that needs range doesn't mean that it's the absolute maximum or the amount that we would deliver over the plan period. It's there as a guide for us to aim for, to provide for retail floor space, if that makes sense.
But if the policy is not written as a minimum, it's written provision 4, so it's not even around. It's not written as a qualified figure.
Yeah.
And my question is, it really is still that can we be satisfied that by 2033, I know the plan will be reviewed by then, but for the plan period, that level of comparison retailing floor space is actually what the council sees as being appropriate to enable the strategic ambitions for the growth of Brentwood Town Centre, for example, to be met. And if that policy was applied, it may restrain opportunities for comparison shopping beyond that. So that's why it needs to be an appropriate figure. I think you are saying that that is the appropriate figure, and I just want to be absolutely sure because it's a big drop.
Yeah, we consider that is an appropriate figure, and the way that it was arrived followed the NPPF and the NPPG's guidelines. And I think from what you said, I think we can consider the wording of the policy so that it would not restrict future development in the borough, so that retail provision can be accommodated.
Right, okay.
Oh, sorry, what's the next set of question? I forgot if I missed anything.
No, I've not asked another question. No, I've just asked the question. I just want to be satisfied with that position, because the plan as submitted has got a fairly significant it's got a different square meterage. I can see the updated study, and I can see where the figure has come from the updated study. The council is happy with that study and is content that it is appropriate. Then that is the evidence base that the council is relying on to suggest that figure of 1604 square metres for comparison. Yeah.
Going forwards, the retail net gains and loss will be monitored, and should there is a concern in terms of retail's demands not being met, then we can consider that as part of the local plan review. However, at this stage, we are content with the figures that was put forward by that was informed by Lichfield and incorporated in the local plan. And if there is a need to consider the policy wording so that it's is more flexible for development in the future, then we would definitely go away and look at that.
So the council is not proposing there are 4 sites at apart from where retail is mentioned as ancillary, but there are 4 sites, aren't there, that have got retail proposals in.
Yeah.
And William Hunter Way car park is effectively the site within Brentwood Town Centre.
Yeah.
And so that policy doesn't have any figure at all for retail in.
Yeah. So
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh no! If you finish, I will.
So it doesn't have any figure at all for retail in. So and we don't know whether what the nature of that retail would be, whether it would be convenience, comparison, what the split would be. But for those allocations, we would need to be satisfied. Well, the council would need to be satisfied that they fit within those total strategic floor space figures. So with William Hunter car park, does that fit within the figures that are in the study that have been put into the floor space figures for Brentwood Town Centre? The floor space figures in the table are not policy, but they relate to how the figure has been put together. So, for example, on Brentwood Town Centre net, it's 704. But 2032 is 742 square meters net.
What document are we on?
We're on the Brentwood Retail Study Update.
Updated in.
Appendix 3, Comparison Goods Capacity, Table 12.
Bear with me, I'm just loading up my, still loading, it's a bit slow. The answer, I think the broad answer is that what we could do in terms of improve the policy is to insert a reference to the 4 sites, which include R1, R2, R14, and R15. And in terms of this, and also the primary shopping area, which is set out in PC08 and on policies map. And in terms of William Hunter Ways and other sites, I think there were other sites in the town centre. They would fall into the catchment, so the boundary of the primary shopping area. Therefore, in summary, the 4 allocation sites, as I just mentioned, and the primary shopping areas would be the areas where retail provision are accommodated.
Does the council have any a particular figure in mind or nature of the retail that would be expecting on William Hunter Way?
Not at the moment, but it would be something as part of the conversations between the council and the applicants. I think this is one of the council-owned land, so it would be something that we consider when the planning application comes forward.
But would it be more than would a comparison element? And I know you don't know, but would it be likely that the comparison element would be more than the 742 square meters that the study implies is the floor space growth figure by 2033 for Brentwood Town Centre?
We don't have that information to hand, Inspector, and as I mentioned, it would be monitored. Retail floor space comparison or convenience will be floor space as we go forward. And should we consider that there is a need that is not being met, then we can incorporate that as a part of the local plan review.
Okay. Thank you. So in terms of not wanting to allocate specific sites with specific retail allocations, the council has taken the position that it thinks that it requires some flexibility in those proposals that it requires the policy to support.
Yes.
And in that sense, then, the council has considered that paragraph 85 of the framework refers to, if you look at section D, planning policies should allocate a range of suitable sites in town centres to meet the scale and type of development likely to be needed, looking at least 10 years ahead. So that so the council is then saying that the allocations that it now has in the town centre, which is really William Hunter Way, is meeting that requirement set out in the framework.
It is not just William Hunter Way, but it's also R15 Waits Way Industrial.
Waits Way, yeah.
Yes, as well. And I think in G11A, I think I have the figures from the planning applications. showing how much retail floor space that they propose to be on the site, and it is quite a large figure, and we consider that going forward that would deliver together with other windfall developments within around this town centre as well, the retail requirement would be met.
But on Waite's Way, it's mainly convenience, isn't it, from the application?
I think so. Yes. I'm not completely sure, but yes, yeah. Yes.
So okay. So will you? But what it seems to be is that there is a position that the council doesn't require any specific allocation of comparison type shopping in the town centre.
Yeah, no, we don't set it out. Because we consider that because this period, especially when it's been exacerbated by the pandemic and Brexit, it's a very it is a difficult position, and if we set out a specific number, it is we think that it is better for the end users to consider as part of their planning applications, because every business operates under their own business framework, and they would need to consider that they would need to take that into account.
Okay, thank you. The policy refers to retail and commercial leisure growth, but the policy doesn't refer to leisure. Can you just understand what the policy approach is to leisure? I think it proposed to insert leisure into PC08, but what is the council's approach to leisure facilities, leisure developments?
If you bear with me 1 second, Inspector,
okay.
Just so that I can confer with my colleague. Yeah. So as we set out in G11A, the floor space or retail floor space has incorporated 10% for commercial leisure uses. So we don't separate those two out, because it is part of that retail provision in the policy. So the wording changes has incorporated retail and leisure, so that it is clear that the commercial leisure elements are considered.
So the policy change you just referred to is, can you just highlight that to me? Is it the change that on PC08?
Bear with me, Inspector. Let me get to the page on F9A.
MM61.
That deletes deletes paragraph F. Because the retail assessment.
Oh.
The impact assessment test is covered in another policy.
So what I'm looking at is paragraph 26 of the council's hearing statement.
Yep.
Page 7, that says, in modification MM61 of F9A, council proposed that criterion F should be deleted as it duplicates criterion BPC11. And then it says, on reflection, actually, we think it should be.
Should stay in.
Should stay in,
yeah.
But the word and leisure any retail and leisure developments proposed. So that
Yes.
is leisure as in not
Com-
planned for leisure, but leisure facilities that might
That might come forward, absolutely.
arise.
Yes, that's right. Out of centre. So that's to accord with paragraph 89 of the MPPF.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Can we look at PC08? Unless Mrs. Wright has got any further questions. I know we're kind of merging between the two, but PC07, Mrs. Wright, have you got any questions on PC07?
No, I've not got no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. So PC08 is where the retail hierarchy of designated centres is set out, and we've referred to criterion F, and I could follow what the council is suggesting now be put in, that be retained, but deleted in a subsequent policy. We'll come on to that, and leisure put in. But in respect of the list of designated centres, the proposal is only just a minor one from the council now, is that the primary shopping area of Dunton Hills Garden Village be informed in the by the local plan review. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So can I just ask then about the designation of West Horndon Village Centre, because the policy, it's in here as a local centre, West Horndon Village Centre. The policy for West Horndon requires a village centre. Is that a new village centre, or is it
an expansion of
adding to the existing village centre?
The village centre in the site allocation would be within the West Horndon Village Centre.
So it would be within the existing West Horndon built.
Yeah, that's my
Village.
understanding. Yeah.
Okay.
It's expanding it. It's expanding it, Tom, isn't it? It's expanding the existing.
Oh, it's expanded. Shall I?
Well,
If you don't mind, I'm just
Okay.
checking with my colleague. Thank you.
So I think the situation is that we're looking at the existing centre in West Horndon. There might be some limited expansion, but it's not going to take it out of the hierarchy.
Okay, thank you. I was wondering whether there should be two local centres actually in West Horndon, but the answer is no.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any other changes to policy PC08 that the council wishes for us to consider?
No, sir, we haven't proposed any further.
Thank you. PC09. Oh, sorry, Mrs. Wright.
Sorry, I did come in a little bit late there. My apologies. I forgot to put my hand up. So I just wanted clarification. And again, it's similar to the settlement hierarchy element, in that the settlement hierarchy was outside of the actual policy itself. It was set out in a figure, and now, and I'm just wondering whether the retail hierarchy should be within the policy, and what status it has referring to a figure that's outside of the policy and within the supporting text. Just council thoughts on that.
Yeah, we can give that some consideration to maintain consistency in the approach of the plan. I need to take instructions on the issue of the figures, but certainly it would do no harm for future decision making we don't need necessarily to put the table into the policy, but make reference to it as representing the retail hierarchy in the borough. I think we'd probably do that anyway.
Well, the wording in A actually sets that out, that the designated centres and primary shopping areas are detailed in figure 7.7, but are they? I'm just trying to determine whether this policy is designating those centres and whether they're just it's a nuance on the wording. But the policy isn't designating them. It's saying that they are detailed in figure 7.7. So it's understanding where the designated centres have come from. And I know you're rolling them forward from previous plans, but obviously that plan, if and when this plan becomes adopted, that plan will no longer exist. So it's this plan that's designating.
Yeah.
So it's just I just don't want to, I'm thinking from an appeal inspector perspective, coming in and then there being all of these discussions about what is the town centre, what is the designated shopping centre, etc., etc., the district shopping centre. So I'm not saying that what is set out here is wrong, but I'm just wondering whether some clarity is required to just make that clear.
Do you mean defining their extent, Mrs. Wright?
I think in actually sort of allocating them designating them, I should say, they're not allocations, they're designations, is actually making it very clear that it's this plan that is designated these centres, because that can have implications later on for when retail proposals could come forward or leisure proposals could come forward on how a decision maker determines that. So it's about whether the list of ordinarily, and I'm not saying that they have to be in the policy, but ordinarily the retail hierarchy, as in town centre, Brentwood town centre, and defining those is set out in the policy.
We could say
you have said they're designated on the you do say that they are shown on the Brentwood policies map, which then gives some clarity.
And then B refers to them, how they're broken down.
They are, but it doesn't list them. It doesn't list what is a local centre, which settlements. It doesn't list them. You have to then go to the figure,
the table,
figure 7.7, to actually find out, okay, what is a local centre? Now that could be, that's okay, but I just wanted to just get the council's view on that from your perspective of dealing with planning applications within Brentwood, and whether not having them within the actual policy would cause you any difficulties.
Yes, okay, I'll take that into account and see if we might tweak the wording to make it abundantly clear that the plan designates these centres and that the hierarchy and that it reflects the hierarchy and the various locations within the hierarchy. So I can add a form of wording that will assist there, I hope.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Warden.
Thank you. Can I look at policy PC 09 Brentwood Town Centre? And I haven't got many questions on this, and I realise that we will have to return to this policy because we're waiting for the council to produce the paper on the town centre sites in relation to parking. and the William Hunter Way and the Brentwood Station policies refer to providing an appropriate quantum of parking, and we don't know what that means yet. So there may well be consequential changes to this policy once we consider the Brentwood Town Centre sites. I've asked a question about William Hunter Way, for example, and again, we need to be satisfied that that these policies relate to and don't unnecessarily duplicate the policies in the allocations. Has the council got a view on that? I'm thinking in particular of the sites which are separately allocated, which would be William Hunter Way in respect of retail, I understand.
This policy essentially is the overarching policies for applications around the town centre. So it applies to windfall development as well, should they come forward in the future. And it can also apply to the sites in the town centre. If there is element of duplicating within the site policies, then as part of our reviews on proposed modifications, we will take them out if that's appropriate.
And are these areas defined on the policies map? Or is it that they just lie within the town centre as defined on the policies map? Because they're not specific allocations, they're rather descriptions of certain areas of the town centre.
We're talking about PC10, which is mixed use in the designated centres, right? The designated centres are defined on the policies map. And it is a designation, so this policy essentially applies to those within that boundary.
Sorry, I was referring to PC09, and for example, Chapel Ruins, the Bay Tree Centre, South Street. So those areas, so that is just, they're not defined separately. They're not allocations. It's just a policy approach to those areas within the town centre,
yes,
in respect of how they would be, what guidance, what approach would take to proposals within them.
Yeah, that's correct. Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, can I move on to policy PC10? Which is the policy mixed use development in designated centres. So can you just, you started to explain to me, Ms. Hung, about the policy and what this policy was trying to achieve. Can you just take me through it, please?
Yes, sir. The policy is essentially trying to achieve what is set out in the NPPF, particularly paragraph 85B, which is clear that planning policies should define the extent of town centres and primary shopping areas and clear the range of uses permitted in such locations. So the policies, pardon me, I'm just jumping back to the policies here. Yeah, the policies here sets out the types of uses that are encouraged or permitted around designated centres, and it also refers to figure 7.8, which provide that clarity of what uses what is town centre uses and what is non-town centre uses.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask questions about hot food takeaways?
Yes.
Which is set out in Part C, D. And can I just understand the council's position, because the council has put forward some suggestions in relation to hot food takeaways, which I think are generally more helpful wording than is set out in the policy. So can you just explain to me what it is that the council is seeking to achieve with the policy approach in relation to hot food takeaways?
When we draft the plan back in 2016, we had conversations with public health officers at Essex County Council, and it was recommended as a Essex-wide approach to trying to restrict the operations of hot food takeaways that are close to schools. And which is why we carry this policy wording. We incorporate this policy wording as part of this policy, PC10. As we update when we prepare the hearing statement, it was I think Public Health England has published the latest guidance, and it provides some model policy wording, and we incorporate that into the updated changes in the policy. The aim is to ensure that this type of use will not have a negative impact on the health of children and the public in general.
Mrs. Wright?
Can I just clarify the evidence that exists behind the justification for this policy, please? Can you just point me to the specific evidence as to why there is proposed to be this restriction of a 400-metre distance?
We don't have particular evidence on the specific distance, 400 meters guidance on this issue. It was as part of the conversations with Essex Public Health, and it was advised that was a standard standard distance.
Could the council please provide a plan showing these distances from the entrances of the primary and secondary schools so that we can see what the coverage would be? Because without understanding what the 400 metres means, it could mean that the vast majority of the urban area of the borough can't have hot food takeaways in it. But until we see that distance mapped out, we don't know what that would be. So just so that we can understand the evidence behind that, because they're hot food takeaways, and obviously there is an argument that there are healthy hot food takeaways as well. So actually you're stopping those from coming forward. I know that's not the norm, rather than the normal sort of hot food takeaway providers. But there is a growing, there is a growth in sort of more healthier, sort of vegan, come vegetarian sort of hot food takeaway establishments now. So again, has the council sort of thought about that in relation to this policy? I probably think not, but I just wanted to just ask the council about that.
I think the answer, honestly, is no. But with respect to the plan, we can provide that. to give you a good idea of what the restriction, were it to remain in the policy, would have.
Okay. And there's been no assessment in the local area in terms of childhood obesity and, you know, in terms of school access, because why primary schools as well? Because obviously primary school children aren't allowed out at lunch times. So, and they would be picked up by parents. They're not allowed to sort of wander off on their own. So there's an element of why that restriction. Secondary school, you could argue, because some secondary school pupils are allowed out. So I'm just trying to understand, do you have specific evidence in the Brentwood area from local schools and healthy eating issues or obesity in terms of local evidence?
Can I just add to that, in that if the evidence exists, should it be a policy that should apply across the whole borough? And also, I'm looking at the policy that's in the submitted plan, which says that proposals for hot food takeaways would be restricted, and then talks about opening hour limitations. I'd have some questions about that, but then in the council's statement, in the hearing statement, it says actually proposals for new hot food takeaways within 400 metres of secondary schools, primary schools, will not be permitted. And then says, in order to minimise impact on local environment, amenity, and promote a healthy weight environment, it may be appropriate to control the operation and opening hours of hot food takeaways. But it's already said that they won't be permitted. So I think the what is being proposed is perhaps a little bit confusing. And as Mrs. Wright said, I think we would need to be satisfied that if there was an approach taken to hot food takeaways, that it was based upon sound evidence.
Okay, well, what I'm going to propose, a lot of this comes from the county, as you will appreciate, and its public health officers. So what we need to do is just establish the rationale behind this and indicate what evidence is available to support a restrictive approach. Secondly, we need to understand why it should apply to primary schools for the reasons expressed. And thirdly, we need to understand whether there is a need to impose stricter requirements. If it's justified, then the extent to which we need to impose stricter requirements as being now proposed in the modifications. So if you would allow us a little time to get that information from the county and to give it to you as it is, and it will then be open to you to go with the modifications, or some of them, as the case may be, or to suggest other modifications based upon the evidence.
I think that's a very good way forward. So thank you for suggesting that. Could I just clarify what we would like to see in relation to the plans? Could the plan showing this 400 metre distance, that obviously it will be as the crow flies, so it will be circles around each of the entrances, the entrance points of those schools. And although this policy applies to designated centres, it's if you could provide that outside designated centres as well, just so that we can understand whether there are any implications outside of those designated centres. But also either on the same plan or on a separate plan, on the same plan would be best, if you can actually show where existing takeaways are, hot food takeaways are. You should have that information. Again, that shows us where there are groups of existing hot food takeaways which then could form part of your evidence as to, well, we've already got them there. And obviously existing hot food takeaway, this policy would not affect any existing that are already in those locations. If if you have a particular grouping of hot food takeaways in a certain area immediately adjacent to a school or whatever, then that may assist with some form of evidence. I mean, I can't create evidence for you. That's for you to come up with the evidence. But I think if you can just set that out for us on a plan, that would just very easily show us how this will impact on hot food takeaway providers, etc., as well as the councils trying to assist with healthy communities, etc.
So we certainly can do that for you, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Warden.
Thank you. Are there any other changes to policy PC10 that the council wishes to consider?
Not PC10, it's just that figure 7.8 regarding the office. I just noticed that office uses is actually defined in the NPPF as one of the main center uses. So it's just need to be moved to the right column, to the left column, sorry. But that's, we will incorporate that in our proposed modification.
Okay, thank you. PC11 deals with primary shopping areas, there was a change. And council just identify what changes it wishes to consider in relation to this policy.
Within the hearing statement, Inspector, is that?
Yes.
Yeah. I think the additional changes compared to F9A would be the deletion of D, because we consider that it's
that's right. Yes. Yes.
The other policy. I think that was about it.
Okay.
Potentially, no, I was wrong. Sorry, that was it.
Just D. So on, if we're looking at the submitted policy, we could take out D, so that's not, so that, because otherwise, yeah, avoids that duplication. So on part B, proposed retail development will be supported if they. So I think we would need to be clearer on wording, because we're not particularly keen to have word supported in the policy. So that wording would need to be made clearer.
Yes, I think in G11A, the hearing statement, page 7, I think we have crossed that out, and yeah.
Okay, yeah, I've got that.
Thank you.
Yeah, because it's in an earlier part, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. I've seen that. And C then is proposed to be deleted as well.
Yeah.
And what is the reason for that?
I think because it was not justified, and we don't have the evidence that it can potentially to honor us. That was the reason.
Okay. Now, in respect of primary shopping areas, as they're shown on the proposals map, can you just help me that they were called, but they just called town centre areas within the existing local plan, but they weren't called primary shopping areas. Is that correct on the policies map?
Let me open the policies map. Sorry, what's your question again, Inspector?
The question is, I'm trying to understand what the approach has been to defining the primary shopping areas in this plan compared to the previous plan, and whether there are any changes within the proposed changes to the policies map, for example. And if we look at Brentwood Town Centre, I'm wanting to know whether there's been any change, or whether it is a change in area, in extent, or whether it is just a change in designation in terms of how it's been named, for example, because it looks very similar to the existing policies map designation of
the prime frontage area. Is that the layer that you're looking at?
I'm looking at inset map 2 on the policies map, but
so there is no boundary changes. The layer that was carried forward in the 2005 existing plan is the prime frontage area.
Prime frontage.
Yeah, so that's essentially now the primary shopping area,
Okay.
so that it's aligned better to the NPPF term.
So we're taking that forward in the into this plan,
Yes.
but renaming it primary shopping area.
Yes, correct.
So in what way did the council look at assessing the boundaries of those of what is now the primary shopping area? What did it look at, whether they should be amended in any way so that they would be appropriate for the plan period to 2033, rather than being appropriate for the previous plan period?
The intention for the prime shop frontage area in the 2005 plan is that all the retail development will be concentrated in that area. So when the NPPF was updated, it removed the reference of secondary and primary frontages, and it only referred to the primary shopping areas. So therefore, we consider that the original intentions to concentrate retail development in such area is still remain consistent, and it's just the term that was changed, but the intention remains. So therefore, there was no changes in terms of boundaries.
And that was the same for any of the. So it was the same for the other primary shopping areas.
Yes. Yes, correct.
So no geographical change, just a change in the name.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Mrs. Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I just wanted to clarify how that fits the primary shopping area with the proposed residential designation with R14 then, which is within the defined primary shopping area where the predominant use is proposed to be retail. So how does that fit?
It's going to have primary.
Mom, just give us a little moment, would you please?
That's fine, thank you.
We don't think it is within the primary shopping area. Hold on a minute, somebody differs with again.
Well,
sorry, this is a bit embarrassing.
Can you just type it? I'm looking at the proposed changes to policies map, where it's within the area.
It is within the area.
Yeah.
If that's an error and it needs to come out, I mean, obviously, I recognise that within R14 that some retail is proposed as part of that policy, and I know the council's going to be looking at that as part of your car parking's site note that you're producing. But obviously, there's also a proposal for around 300 new homes on there. So I was just trying to understand. So is that site supposed to be part of the primary shopping area?
I think Mr. Drain will explain it to you.
Okay.
It's retail at the ground floor.
Thank you, Inspector. Just took a while to check the map and where the lines are. Yes, indeed, as you say, it's within the primary shopping area. I think that's logical in terms of the fact that the site has a frontage on William Hunter Way itself, despite the fact that you may not expect any retail to come forward to the rear of the site. Certainly the frontage that would then mean it would make sense to include the site within the area. Would mean that as part of the mixed-use development that's being proposed on the site, if there were to be any retail, then that would reinforce the council's position that William Hunter Way is a sort of secondary retail road. Not that that's designated in any way, but certainly in the existing local plan and as carried forward in this local plan, the history of that road is really of a service road to the rear of the high street, and so therefore policies that try and encourage some form of frontage and activity along that road, whether it be residential, retail, different uses, has been something that the councillors wanted to try and achieve along there. So certainly the redevelopment potential of William Hunter Way as a site, the car park site itself, would want to maximise the opportunities of the frontage along that road, thereby creating some form of retail along there.
So that's the reasoning why it's within the primary shopping area.
Yes.
Okay. Even though it's not on a main primary shopping frontage. Right. Well, I'll leave that with the council, because obviously we'll be coming back to these sites and considering that at a later time next week. So thank you very much for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Can we just look at policy PC12, please, which is non-centre uses, and there is a change to this that the council's proposing to this policy. Can you just explain that change, please?
These are just drafting changes to make the policy effective. Before it said designated centres, proposals for non-centre uses in those centres should demonstrate how. So to make the policy effective, it's a requirement that they comply with the criteria that follows.
Thank you. And they're set out that change. Just remind me where that change is.
F9A MM65.
Thank you. Thank you.
And there's also a further change to paragraph C of that policy to relate it to the designated centre.
Thank you. And then figure 7.8 is updated to reflect the use classes changes.
Yes, it is, sir.
Thank you. Mrs. Wright, have you got any comments or questions on PC12?
No, I haven't. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we look at PC13, please, which is the final policy? And this is about the nighttime economy. Can I just understand what is it that the council is seeking to achieve with this policy? What's the objective behind it?
It is to strike a balance between diversifying town centre economy and managing a safe, convenient and enjoyable environment for residents within the town centres areas. Nighttime activities are recognised to have a potential to increase economic activities and allow the designated centres to diversify. The definition of main town centre uses in the NPPF include those that involve nighttime activities, and therefore we were trying to create policies to manage that.
Thank you. Is there a modification on this that the council has proposed in 13?
I don't think there is, sir. Just checking.
There isn't one in F9.
No, not F9.
In that case, the wording of the policy is submitted refers to be encouraged, and we think that wording is probably not the right wording in terms of policy, and that's why I was asking the reason, the rationale behind the policy, really, and what it is it's seeking to achieve. So is it seeking to direct uses towards the designated centres? Is it seeking to manage and control proposals for such uses within the designated centres? I'm just wondering how it would apply to all of the designated centres, and is it intended to apply, for example, to local centres? So in the village centre of West Horndon, would this?
It is intended to apply to all centres, and there's no reason why, of course, that local centres shouldn't have something of a nighttime or after-hours economy, and particularly where growth is identified for those areas. The objective, someone's got their mic on here. The objective of the policy is, as it states, to raise standards and broaden the appeal of the nighttime economy, and to make sure that it's available and respects to all and respects diversity. So your first comments are about the beginning of the policy, the word encouraged. There's several words that can be just taken out of that. So it says after hours cultural, entertainment and leisure uses in designated centres, and then delete will be up until leisure. should raise standards and broaden the appeal of the nighttime economy. Proposals should be safe and welcoming. This, I think that's laudable, accessible. It may be that offer a vibrant choice of leisure and entertainment is not something one can impose on a particular form of development that comes forward, but it should be available for a diversity of ages, lifestyles and cultures, including families and older people. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. The trouble is, the policy is generic in a sense that it's looking at the overall mix, which is intended to be encouraged in the centre. So I'm just wondering whether it should say proposals should contribute towards the following objectives. So a proposal that doesn't fit within these objectives, is contrary to these objectives, could then be said to be not compliant with the policy. So so it says after hours cultural entertainment and leisure uses in designated centres should raise standards to broaden the appeal of the nighttime economy. Proposals should contribute towards the following objectives: be safe and welcoming, allow people to walk and cycle around the centre with ease, etc., etc.
Yeah, we need to. Yes, it's possible. Yeah, I think the wording needs to be changed.
Yeah.
And it needs to be focused on what it is the policy is seeking to achieve.
Yeah.
And I think that with it being called nighttime economy, it immediately thinks it relates to very late night economy. And then the word after hours, I wonder whether that is a bit of an outdated term in some respects, and whether what actually we're talking about is more of an evening economy rather than after hours. I don't know what we really mean by after hours.
No,
so in that sense, the policy isn't particularly clear about the type of uses it's specifically seeking to relate to, and what it is that it's seeking to achieve.
Okay, let us have a look at that. I think the policy can be reworded quite simply in a manner or similar to the way I've suggested already. What we can do, I think, in terms of what it is, what the evening and nighttime economy is, we can give a broad description of that in the supporting text. But we're talking about uses that are open primarily in the evening and during the night. So we can give a description of those. But I'm confident that the policy can be made effective in the way I've suggested, with a few changes.
Thank you.
I think my only point to add to that is to steer clear of just statements, because a lot of these are just read as statements within the policy. So what are the actual requirements that you expect from that development? Be safe and welcoming. How is that a planning policy requirement? Absolutely, it needs to. Yes, of course, the council wants such development to be safe and welcoming, but I don't understand how that can be a requirement.
In a planning sense.
What you're expecting developers to provide.
Yes, I understand that. In a planning sense, one only has so much control over these things.
Yes,
and it's
but obviously the intent can be set out in supporting text, can't it? Yeah. But it's whether it should be in policy. Yeah.
And okay. And that was going back to a point I made about what it effectively, to what degree the policy is seeking to manage and control proposals so that they, for example, are safe, provide a safe environment. And in respect of, for example, criterion E, it's talking about character and immediacy of the surrounding residential area, and as inspectors, we generally refer to not having a detrimental impact on the living conditions of the occupants of neighbouring properties. It's that kind of thing that it's seeking. I think the policy is seeking to achieve that they don't have a harmful effect on the living conditions of residents. So
yes, yeah,
I think it just needs to be focused. Yeah. I think.
I understand the point you're making. So what we could do actually is put a lot of this into the supporting text and be very specific about what we expect proposals to do from a planning point of view.
Thank you. Mrs. Rice, have you got any further questions on PC 13?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Is there anything the council wishes to add? I don't have any more questions on retail.
Nothing from us, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
That concludes this session, and we shall we'll see you tomorrow for a day on the environment.
See you tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
Hope it's a sunny one too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.